There are enemies who throw stones loud and obvious, and then there are enemies who throw shadows silent, invisible, but far more dangerous. The ones who don't announce themselves, who don't confront you in the open, but linger quietly at the edges of your life, waiting for the moment when you stumble. A stone can be blocked, a blade can be parried, but a shadow, how do you defend yourself from something you can't always see? Picture this. In the corner of a quiet room, a spider begins to weave its web. It doesn't rush. It doesn't pounce. It waits. The strands are nearly invisible, easy to ignore if you're not looking closely. And yet, every second, the trap grows tighter, and the moment you falter, you're already caught. Or imagine a vulture circling above, not because it dares to attack while you're strong, but because it knows eventually you will fall. That is the psychology of the hidden enemy, not confrontation, but patience, not open hatred, but the slow desire to see you erased. We like to believe that hatred is obvious, that if someone despises us, we will hear it in their words, feel it in their actions, see it on their face. But the truth is far darker. The most dangerous enemy is rarely the one shouting. It is the one who smiles at you in the hallway, who nods when you speak, who claps when others are watching. And yet, underneath that performance carries a single burning wish, that you collapse, that you vanish, that you stop existing, not just in their life, but in the eyes of everyone else. Ask yourself this: have you ever felt it? That subtle shift in the air, when someone's presence doesn't bring neutrality, but quiet hostility. When their eyes don't reflect curiosity or care, but calculation? Have you ever walked away from a conversation with the uneasy sense that the person wasn't merely indifferent to you, but almost delighted at the thought of your downfall? That is not simple dislike. That is not irritation. That is the mark of someone who doesn't just hate you. They want you gone. And here's the truth you must face. These people rarely attack directly. They don't start wars, they wait for accidents. They don't swing swords, they plant whispers. They don't crush you with a single blow, they chip away piece by piece, until you begin to doubt yourself, until your circle begins to shrink, until your strength feels like it belongs to another man entirely. And by the time you realize what has happened, you are standing alone, wondering how you got here, and who quietly opened the floor beneath your feet. The Stoics understood this kind of enemy long before we gave it modern names. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the true harm in life doesn't come from the things others say or do, but from how we choose to let them shape us. The enemy may throw shadows, but it is only when we stake those shadows for reality that they can break us. Epictetus taught that no man can truly harm you unless you hand him the keys to your mind. And Seneca warned us to watch carefully those who flatter too easily, for flattery often hides the hand that sharpens the knife. This is why awareness is your greatest defense. To recognize, to name, to see clearly, that is already to weaken the shadow. Because once you know what to look for, once you can identify the signs, the trap begins to lose its power. The vulture circling above becomes less terrifying when you realize it only has power if you collapse. The spider's web becomes less dangerous when you refuse to walk blindly into it. So how do you recognize them? How do you see through the smiles, the false support, the whispers in the dark. That's what this journey is about. There are 9 signs, 9 distinct behaviors that reveal when someone isn't simply hostile, but is quietly hoping for your destruction. As you listen, don't just think about faces in your past. Think about the ones around you now. Because the most disturbing truth is this: the person who wants you gone might already be closer than you think. And before we begin, let me remind you, if you want to learn how to guard your mind with the same discipline the Stoics once practiced, if you want to build the inner strength to see through shadows and remain unshaken, subscribe to True Stoic Way right now. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a list, it's a shield, a strategy, and perhaps the one insight that spares you from walking into the trap. 1. They smile when you struggle. It begins in the smallest flicker, the corner of a mouth twitching upward, the gleam in an eye that lingers a moment too long. You're speaking about something painful, something that has shaken you, and while their words may be polite, their face betrays them. The expression is not sympathy, not compassion, but a quiet satisfaction, a subtle delight that you are finally brought low. They don't need to laugh out loud. They don't even need to speak. That single flicker, that almost hidden smile, is their confession. Why would someone feel joy when you are suffering? The answer lies not in your weakness, but in theirs. Those who secretly smile at your pain are not strong. They are hollow. They carry resentment like a slow poison, a bitterness that grows heavier with every success you achieve, every moment you stand tall. They cannot climb to your level, so they wait for you to fall to theirs. And when life strikes you, as life inevitably does, they are there, not with an open hand to help, but with an inner celebration that finally you are no longer untouchable. It's a dangerous kind of satisfaction, because it reveals something deeper than ordinary dislike. Dislike might roll its eyes. Hatred might shout. But the person who quietly savors your hardship has crossed into something colder, something crueler. It is not just about disagreeing with your choices or disliking your personality. It is about validation proof in their mind that your success was never real, that your strength was only an illusion, that beneath the surface, you are just as breakable as they always hoped you'd be. Marcus Aurelius warned us against such people long ago. No truly grounded soul finds joy in another's suffering. A man or woman at peace within themselves does not need your collapse to feel whole. Only the unstable, only the spiritually bankrupt, find nourishment in the pain of others. Their smile is not evidence of your weakness. It is evidence of their rot. Let me tell you a story. A man I know, let's call him Ryan, had been doing well for years. A steady career, a stable family, the kind of life that draws both admiration and envy. Then suddenly, the foundation cracked. He lost his job. It was unexpected, humiliating, and heavy to carry. One evening, in quiet desperation, he confided in an old colleague he considered a friend. As Ryan spoke, he watched carefully. The man nodded at the right moments, murmured polite words, but then Ryan saw it. A twitch at the corner of his lips, a glint in his eyes. Not compassion, not sorrow, but satisfaction. It was subtle, but unmistakable. And in the weeks that followed, Ryan noticed something worse. The same man began repeating Ryan's story to others, but with small distortions that painted Ryan as careless, irresponsible, the architect of his own misfortune. By the time Ryan realized what was happening, his reputation was already colored. That was the day he understood. This person had never wished him well. He had simply been waiting for the chance to enjoy the fall. So how do you deal with people like this? First, trust what you see. That flicker of delight in your suffering is not a mistake. It is a glimpse behind the mask. Don't gaslight yourself into believing you imagined it. Second, refuse to give them the show they crave. They feed on your collapse, so starve them of that pleasure. Rise quietly. Heal in silence. Rebuild without spectacle. And finally, remember this. The greatest revenge against the one who smiles at your pain is not to retaliate, not to explain, but to stand again with calm dignity, proving that their satisfaction was temporary, but your resilience is eternal. At the end of the day, the smile they give you is not about you, it's about them, their emptiness, their envy, their need for your pain to justify their existence. So don't carry their shadow. Don't let their secret celebration become your wound. Guard your peace. Move forward quietly. Because the truth is, nothing unnerves such a person more than the sight of you standing, stronger than before, untouched by the darkness they had hoped would consume you. 2. They undermine your reputation in silence. Not every enemy raises their voice. Some destroy you without ever speaking loudly, without ever pointing a finger in public. They work in the shadows, not with fists or open insults, but with whispers, half-truths, distortions, subtle suggestions planted in the ears of others. And by the time you realize what has happened, the damage is already there. The room feels colder, the glance is sharper, the conversation shorter. No explosion, no confrontation, just the quiet unraveling of your name. This is the tactic of the silent destroyer. They want you discredited, not by accusation, but by doubt. Doubt spreads faster than proof. Doubt requires no evidence, only a whisper framed carefully. I don't want to start drama, but... Or maybe you didn't hear the full story. They never say too much, never enough to be pinned down, but just enough to plant a seed. And once the seed is planted, it grows in the minds of others without their awareness. Why do they do this? Because open attack would expose them. It would require courage, confrontation, accountability. Whispering, however, allows them to stay clean while you look dirty. They get to smile in public while poisoning in private. It is the coward's strategy, and yet, if unchecked, it is devastatingly effective. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who lived through exile and hostility, captured this perfectly. A man's reputation is built in silence and shattered in whispers. It doesn't take a scandal to destroy you. It doesn't take a public trial. Sometimes it takes nothing more than a steady stream of soft, poisoned words, spoken just out of your earshot. Let me give you an example. A woman I know, let's call her Emily, was thriving in her workplace. Respected, competent, admired for her reliability. But one colleague, who smiled often and seemed friendly, quietly felt threatened. And instead of confronting Emily directly, this person began twisting small details, retelling conversations out of context, implying that Emily was difficult to work with, that she wasn't as cooperative as she appeared. At first, it was nothing Emily could put her finger on, but slowly she noticed changes. Invitations to meetings became fewer. Colleagues greeted her with less warmth. People hesitated when she spoke, and she realized with growing unease that the ground beneath her reputation was shifting, not because of anything she had done, but because someone had been whispering long enough to make others doubt her. Now here's the crucial Stoic lesson. You cannot control the whispers. You cannot stop every mouth, cannot chase every rumor, cannot spend your life correcting distortions. If you try, you will exhaust yourself on a battlefield that does not belong to you. The Stoics remind us that your only true responsibility is your character, your integrity, your consistency. That is the fortress that no whisper can fully tear down. So what do you do when someone undermines you in silence? You live in such a way that the truth speaks louder than their distortions. You refuse to chase gossip down dark alleys. You remain steady, consistent, authentic. Because in the long run, people who matter will see through the fog. The right eyes will recognize the difference between manipulation and truth. And here's something else. The whisperer always exposes themselves eventually. Lies require constant maintenance. Distortions eventually contradict. The longer you hold steady, the heavier the burden on them. Time, not argument, becomes your ally. But don't misunderstand, this is not easy. It requires discipline to resist offending yourself against every distortion. It requires patience to watch the truth rise slowly instead of demanding it instantly. And it requires a deep Stoic resilience, the kind Marcus Aurelius practiced every day of his life, to keep doing what is right, even when surrounded by those who quietly want you wrong. At the end of the day, remember this: whispers are a sign of fear. The louder someone pretends to admire you in public while stabbing in private, the clearer it becomes that your very existence threatens them. And you don't defeat fear by shouting back. You defeat it by continuing to stand with integrity that cannot be erased. So guard your reputation not by chasing every shadow, but by walking so firmly in the light that the shadows collapse on their own. And if you re-listening to this and realizing how vital it is to protect your peace and keep your character unshaken, make sure you subscribe to True Stoic Way, because here, we don't just expose the tactics of the hidden enemy. We build the mindset to stay unbreakable in the face of them. 3. They pretend to support you publicly. Some enemies don't dare to oppose you in the open, because to do so would expose the darkness in their hearts. Instead, they put on a mask. They clap for you when the crowd is watching. They smile widely in front of others. They speak words of admiration that sound genuine, but all of it is theater. Their praise is not a reflection of respect. It is camouflage, a way to protect their own image while hiding the envy that burns beneath the surface. This is one of the most dangerous kinds of opposition, because it confuses you. It makes you hesitate. After all, how can someone who cheers for you in public be plotting against you in private? But this is exactly why their strategy works. By pretending to support you, they not only disarm your suspicion, they also keep their reputation intact. To everyone else, they look like a loyal friend, a proud supporter, an ally. And in the shadows, when no one is watching, they quietly pull strings to weaken you. The truth is that such people are not clapping for you. They are clapping for themselves. They need to be seen applauding so they can remain untouchable, so they can keep their hands clean while spreading the poison later. They don't want to seem like the villain, so they perform loyalty. But if you pay close attention, their energy never matches their words. Their smiles are thin. Their congratulations are shallow. And when the spotlight fades, so does their so-called support. Marcus Aurelius warned us of this long ago. Do not be deceived by praise. Examine the intent behind it. The Stoics understood that words are cheap. Anyone can say, "I'm proud of you." Anyone can announce, "You deserve this." But words without action are air. True support shows itself not when the crowd is present, but when no one is watching. A real friend defends you in private, not just celebrates you in public. Let me give you a story. A man I'll call Jordan spent over a year building a project that meant everything to him. When he finally launched it, his closest colleague, someone he trusted deeply, gave a glowing speech in front of the audience. He praised Jordan's hard work, highlighted his perseverance, painted him as an inspiration. The crowd applauded, and Jordan felt reassured that this was loyalty. But weeks later, strange rumors began to circulate. People Jordan had never spoken to began repeating comments that sounded eerily familiar, remarks that only his colleague could have known. Things like, "He just got lucky," or "Maybe the whole thing is overhyped." Jordan realized, slowly and painfully, that the same man who clapped the loudest at his launch was quietly planting doubts behind the scenes. His applause had been a mask. His praise had been performance. And when the lights went out, envy took its place. How do you deal with this kind of hidden enemy? First, watch their eyes, not their applause. The mouth can lie, but envy is difficult to hide. It leaks through in small gestures, in silence when you need them most, in the lack of real support when the excitement dies down. Second, don't be fooled by public admiration. Ask yourself, who shows up when it's difficult, when there's no recognition to gain, when standing beside you comes with no reward? That's where loyalty reveals itself. And third, protect your circle. Not everyone who claps wants to see you win. Some only clap because it would look suspicious if they didn't. At the end of the day, remember this. Applause is easy. Integrity is rare. And if you build your sense of worth on the sound of clapping, you'll always be vulnerable to the ones who only clap to disguise their envy. Stand firm in your own truth, your own work, your own discipline. Let your strength come not from their approval, but from your commitment to yourself. And if this resonates with you, if you've ever felt the sting of false praise followed by quiet betrayal, then you already know how important it is to sharpen your perception. That's exactly what we do here at True Stoic Way. We take the illusions apart, we expose the masks, and we build the inner strength to stay unshaken no matter who pretends to clap. So if you haven't yet, subscribe now and keep walking this path with us. 4. They try to isolate you. The strongest attack is rarely head-on. It comes instead in whispers, in subtle nudges, in the quiet engineering of distance. When someone doesn't just dislike you but wants to weaken you completely, they don't strike you directly. They go after your circle. They understand a brutal truth. A man with allies is resilient, but a man alone is vulnerable. So they begin the work of isolation, not by screaming accusations, but by planting doubts, twisting narratives, and quietly turning people away from you one by one. It starts small. A comment dropped in private. "I don't want to say too much, but hasn't he seemed different lately?" Or a carefully placed concern. "I'm worried she's not being honest with you." None of it is dramatic, none of it is loud. But like drops of water, the repetition wears away trust. And over time, you begin to notice the shift. Invitations that once came easily stop arriving. Conversations grow shorter. Friends who once leaned in now lean away. You are not confronted, you are abandoned. Why this strategy? Because isolation is the easiest path to control. Division has always been a weapon. When you stand surrounded, you are strong. When you are cut off, you begin to doubt yourself. You question your worth, your truth, your memory of what really happened. And in that confusion, the enemy gains power. They don't have to attack directly. They just have to let loneliness and suspicion do the work for them. Heraclitus, a philosopher whose ideas the Stoics respected, said it plainly: "The wolf attacks the sheep it separates from the herd. Alone, the sheep is no match for the predator. Together, the herd is untouchable, and so it is with us. Those who seek to harm us without leaving evidence don't need to fight us. They only need to pull us away from everyone who would stand with us." Let me give you an example. A woman I'll call Rachel had always been part of a close-knit circle of friends. For years, the group had supported each other through hardships and celebrated victories together. But Rachel began to notice something subtle. One particular friend, someone who always seemed supportive, started making comments in private. "I don't want to get in the middle, but don't you think Rachel has been acting differently?" Or, "I'm just worried she hasn't been completely honest with you." Rachel never heard these words directly, but she felt the chill in the air. Invitations grew fewer. The warmth that once greeted her was replaced with polite distance. She hadn't done anything wrong, but slowly, the image of her within the group was being reshaped until she found herself standing outside of the circle she once belonged to. What can you do when faced with this? First, recognize the pattern. If you sense that people around you are pulling away without reason, look closely at who has been whispering in the background. Second, resist the temptation to panic. Don't chase every friend. Don't beg for explanations. Don't give the enemy the satisfaction of watching you unravel. Instead, steady. Let your integrity speak over time. The truth always outlasts manipulation. And third, strengthen your core. Build bonds that are rooted in truth, not convenience. Invest in relationships that can survive whispers, because those are the only ones worth keeping. As the Stoics would remind us, you don't need a crowd. You need the right few who see you clearly, even when the air is thick with lies. At the end of the day, isolation is the predator's strategy. But awareness, composure, and consistency are your defense. Refuse to be pulled away from your truth. Refuse to let loneliness rewrite your worth. And if you've ever felt this kind of silent betrayal, if you've watched people fade away, not because of what you did, but because of what they were told, know this: you are not alone here. This is exactly why True Stoic Way exists. We are building a community where whispers lose their power, where integrity holds the line, where men walk this path together with clarity and strength. So don't just listen, subscribe, join us, and refuse to stand isolated. 5. They mirror you to erase you. There's a kind of imitation that flatters, and there's a kind of imitation that steals. At first, it looks harmless. Someone begins to copy the way you speak, the way you present yourself, the way you approach your work. You tell yourself it's admiration, that they see value in what you do and want to learn. But then slowly, you begin to notice something unsettling. They're not copying to grow, they're copying to replace. They don't want to be inspired by you. They want to be you, without you in the picture. This is a strategy as old as envy itself. To erase a man, you don't always need to attack him directly. Sometimes you just need to hollow him out by duplicating his essence until people can no longer tell the difference. If they can present your strengths as their own, if they can wear your ideas like stolen clothes, then one day, in the eyes of others, you become redundant. You're no longer unique, you're unnecessary. And that, for them, is victory. Seneca, the Stoic who spent his life warning against false appearances, gave us a timeless caution: beware those who imitate without reverence. Reverence is the difference. A student copies with gratitude, with humility, with the intent to learn and then build upon what he has learned. But the thief copies without reverence, without acknowledgement, with only one purpose: to take your place. That is not admiration. That is erasure. Let me share a story. A man I'll call Thomas ran a small but successful creative agency. He was known for his unique design style, his ability to win clients with persuasive pitches, and the culture of originality he cultivated in his team. One day, he hired a young employee, bright, eager, and seemingly loyal. At first, Thomas saw the mimicry as a compliment. The employee began speaking in the same tone, using the same expressions, even dressing in a similar way. He imitated Thomas's design style down to the smallest details. Months later, Thomas was blindsided. That same employee resigned and within weeks launched his own agency. The branding looked eerily familiar. The pitch was nearly identical, the client list suspiciously overlapping. It wasn't coincidence, it was strategy. The imitation had never been about learning. It had always been about replacing. Thomas realized painfully that while he had seen a student, what he had actually been nurturing was a rival who wanted his seat at the table. So how do you respond when someone mirrors you in this way? First, trust your instincts. If their admiration feels calculated, it probably is. Don't dismiss that uneasy feeling. Second, protect your process. Not everyone deserves access to the details of how you work, to the ideas you haven't yet built, to the strategies that make you distinct. Guard them the way you'd guard any other form of treasure. And most importantly, remember this: authenticity cannot be stolen. A counterfeit may shine for a moment, but time always reveals the difference between the original and the copy. The imitator may take your style, your tone, even your strategies, but what they cannot take is the inner well from which those things flow. As long as you continue to evolve, to grow, to move forward, they will always be chasing a version of you that no longer exists. You are real. They are a reflection. And reflections vanish when the light changes. At the end of the day, their attempt to erase you is a compliment twisted into hostility. They see in you something they lack. They believe that by stealing it, they can finally feel whole. But their theft only exposes their emptiness. So let them copy, let them mimic. While they are busy rehearsing your past, you will already be writing your future. And if you've ever faced someone who tried to clone your essence, to hijack your uniqueness, then you know how vital it is to stay rooted in what cannot be replicated, your character, your discipline, your evolution. That's the heart of Stoicism, and that's exactly what we cultivate here at True Stoic Way. So if you haven't yet, subscribe and let's keep building the kind of inner originality that no imitator can erase. 6. They push you into self-destruction. Not every enemy swings the first blow. The clever ones don't need to. Instead, they poke, they prod, they whisper. They provoke, waiting for you to lose your composure and hand them the victory with your own hands. They understand a dangerous truth. If they can make you unravel, if they can bait you into exploding, then your downfall will look like your fault, not theirs. They can stand back, shrug, and say, "I didn't do anything. They just couldn't handle it." This is the strategy of provocation. They don't need to strike you directly. They only need to build the fire, then watch as you set yourself ablaze. It's the cruelest form of hostility, because it makes the victim appear as the aggressor. They tempt you into shouting, into snapping, into breaking the frame you've worked so hard to hold, and then, in the aftermath, they emerge clean, while you're left looking unbalanced, unstable, or even dangerous. Why does this work? Because anger, unchecked, is a weapon turned inward. It blinds your judgment, clouds your discipline, and turns your strength into weakness. That's why these people push buttons instead of throwing punches. They don't want to defeat you openly. They want you to defeat yourself. Epictetus, who knew more than most about provocation, left us a warning that cuts straight to the heart. The enemy cannot break you without your consent. That is the essence of Stoicism, recognizing that no one can truly make you lose your composure unless you hand it over to them. They can tempt, they can bait, but the final choice is always yours. Let me share a story. Jessica, a woman I know, worked in a high-pressure corporate office. One particular colleague had it out for her, but never confronted her directly. Instead, he chipped away with little jabs, sarcastic remarks in meetings, forgetting to include her on important emails, dropping subtle insults in front of management that could be dismissed as jokes. Slowly, Jessica felt the frustration building. She wanted to snap, to shout, to expose him. And that was exactly what he wanted. But Jessica did something different. She caught herself. Instead of exploding, she stayed composed. She documented everything: dates, times, comments, omissions. She spoke less, not more, and allowed the evidence to accumulate silently. Weeks later, when leadership finally noticed the pattern, Her calm demeanor became undeniable proof of who was toxic and who was professional. Her silence was not weakness. It was her shield. And in the end, it was her composure, not her anger, that won. So how do you protect yourself from this trap? First, recognize the bait. If it feels like someone is deliberately trying to provoke you, it's because they are. Second, hold the line. Your composure is your greatest weapon. Your silence is not passive. It is active resistance. The moment you refuse to react, you strip them of their strategy. And third, remember that every outburst they try to pull from you is meant to serve as their evidence. Don't hand it to them. Let their frustration be that you will not play the role they've scripted for you. It is not easy. It takes discipline to breathe instead of bite, to pause instead of pounce, to stand steady while someone scratches at your armor. But that is where true strength is proven. Anyone can react. Few can remain still. And as the Stoics remind us, mastery of the self is greater than mastery of the crowd. At the end of the day, provocation only works on the unguarded. They want you to swing wildly so they can stand calmly and say, "See? I told you so." Don't give them that victory. Let your restraint be the blade they cannot block. And if you've ever been tempted to explode in the face of someone's games, let this remind you, self-control is not weakness, it's power. That's what we practice here at True Stoic Way. If you want to learn how to guard your peace, even in the face of those who want you to self-destruct, subscribe now, and let's walk this path together, calm, disciplined, unbreakable. 7. They frame you as the villain. Perhaps the most vicious move an enemy can make is not to oppose you openly, but to rewrite the story so that you become the villain in it. Every silence you hold is twisted into manipulation. Every boundary you set is reframed as arrogance. Every act of honesty is painted as deceit. No matter what you do, they reshape it into something ugly, something dangerous, something that proves the story they've already written in their minds. This is not ordinary dislike. This is narrative warfare. They cannot rest until you are cast as the monster, because only then can they justify their resentment. By painting you as the villain, they get to step into the role of victim, and in victimhood, they find righteousness. People listen more closely to the victim than to the accused. And so, by inverting the story, they gain power not through truth, but through distortion. Why does this strategy cut so deep? Because it forces you into a trap. The natural instinct is to defend yourself, to explain, to clarify, to chase down every lie until it is corrected. But in doing so, you play directly into their plan. Every word you speak becomes another twist in their narrative. Every attempt at defense becomes proof of your guilt. And slowly, without realizing, you are drained, spending your energy trying to fix a story that was never honest to begin with. Marcus Aurelius, who knew all too well the nature of deceit and slander, offered us this reminder: the liar needs an enemy to look righteous. Do not play his role. In other words, the liar survives only if you step into the role they've written for you. The greatest power you hold is refusal, the refusal to become the monster in their fiction, the refusal to dance on the strings of their story. Let me give you an example. A man I'll call Daniel found himself the target of a quiet smear campaign in his own circle of friends. One person, threatened by Daniel's growth, began twisting his words. When Daniel set a boundary, it was painted as selfishness. When he stayed quiet, it was spun as calculation. When he spoke honestly, it was mocked as fake. Piece by piece, his actions were distorted until even those who once trusted him began to wonder. But Daniel did something radical. Instead of exhausting himself in endless explanations, he stopped trying to defend his name to those eager to doubt it. He stepped back. He let his actions, consistent over time, be the only testimony he offered. Slowly, the truth began to re-emerge. His integrity spoke louder than the rumors. His calmness exposed the desperation of the one spreading lies. And eventually, the liar was unmasked, not by confrontation, but by contrast. So how do you respond when someone frames you as the villain? First, resist the urge to fight on their battlefield. Drama is their oxygen. Don't breathe life into it. Second, stay consistent. Lies shift and collapse under their own contradictions, but the truth remains steady. Let your character be the evidence. And third, remember this. You don't need to defend yourself to those who are quick to believe distortions. The people who matter will see through the fog in time. It is one of the hardest disciplines of Stoicism, to endure being misunderstood without burning yourself, out trying to fix every misunderstanding. But in that restraint lies true power. Your dignity is not proven through battle. It is proven through the calm refusal to become what they accuse you of being. At the end of the day, when someone insists on making you the villain, it says nothing about your truth. It only exposes their emptiness. So let them live in fiction. You, meanwhile, must keep showing up in reality. And if this sign struck a chord with you, if you've ever been painted as the enemy by someone who needed to play the victim, then you know how crucial it is to walk with clarity and discipline. That's exactly what we build here at True Stoic Way. So don't just listen, subscribe. And let's keep walking together, stronger, calmer, and immune to the lies of those who fear our light. 8. They celebrate your absence. Sometimes the loudest truth about a relationship isn't revealed when you walk into the room, but when you leave it. There are people who breathe easier the moment you step away, who relax in your absence as if a burden has been lifted, who show a flash of joy not when you arrive, but when you disappear. This is no small detail. It's not simple coincidence. It is the unspoken confession of a heart that never valued your presence in the first place. At first, it can be subtle. You call in sick, and instead of concern, you hear the faint relief in someone's voice. You skip a meeting, and suddenly the atmosphere is lighter, the laughter louder, the energy freer. You realize with a sting of clarity that your absence feels like a gift to them, not a loss. And if they had their way, you would stay gone, not just for a day, but forever. Why does this happen? Because your presence unsettles them. Your very existence is a reminder of their own inadequacy, their own envy, their own discomfort. When you're around, they feel smaller. When you succeed, they feel diminished. And so your absence becomes their relief. It is not because you are heavy to be around. it is because their own weakness cannot bear the weight of your strength. Epictetus gave us the words we need here. If your absence brings joy, they never truly valued your presence. Those who celebrate your disappearance never loved your presence. They only tolerated it, perhaps even resented it, waiting for the moment when they could breathe without you in the room. Consider this story. A man I know, we'll call him Alex, worked in a competitive office environment. He was good at what he did, disciplined, consistent, and because of that, he stood out. But one day, he had to take time off for an illness. When he returned, he noticed something strange. His colleagues seemed unusually cheerful during his absence, almost relieved. A coworker even slipped, saying, "Things felt calmer while you were gone." At first, Alex thought he was imagining it, but then he noticed the pattern. Whenever he missed a day, there was an undeniable shift in the office mood. It wasn't concern for his health. It wasn't, "We missed you." It was subtle, almost celebratory. The truth hit hard. They were happier without him. Not because he had done anything wrong, but because his presence, his competence, his very being unsettled them. So what do you do with this truth? First, you face it directly. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't excuse it. If people find joy in your absence, it tells you everything you need to know about the place you hold in their hearts. Second, don't waste energy forcing yourself into spaces that don't welcome you. Absence reveals what presence conceals. If they don't value you when you're gone, then your presence was never truly appreciated. And third, treat their reaction as a filter. The ones who care will feel your absence as loss. The ones who celebrate it were never your circle to begin with. It's not easy. It hurts to realize that some people prefer your silence to your laughter, your absence to your presence. But in that pain is freedom. Because once you know, you no longer need to fight for space where you are not wanted. You can invest your energy in the people who notice when you're gone, who reach out, who miss your presence, because it brings strength and warmth, not discomfort. At the end of the day, their celebration is not about you. It's about them, their fear, their envy, their inability to stand in the same light. So let them cheer when you leave. That is their confession. And let it be your reminder. You belong with those who grow stronger when you're near, not weaker. And if you've ever felt that sting, if you've ever realized your absence was a party for someone else, then you know why it's so important to build the kind of inner circle that values your presence deeply. That's what we're creating here at True Stoic Way. A community where your presence matters, where strength is welcomed, not feared. So don't just listen, subscribe, and walk with us in the company of those who value you as you are. 9. They twist your success into threats. Success should be a moment of celebration, but not for everyone. There are people who cannot bear the sight of your progress, who refuse to acknowledge the sweat, the discipline, the countless hours you poured into building something real. Instead, they twist it. They reduce your achievement to luck. They dismiss your growth as arrogance. They paint your light as a danger, not because it is harmful, but because it exposes their shadows. You'll recognize them in the way they react when you share good news. Instead of genuine happiness, there's hesitation in their applause. Instead of encouragement, there's a subtle jab. They say things like, "Well, don't get too comfortable," or, "I guess anyone could have pulled that off with the right timing." Their words may sound casual, but the intent is sharp. It isn't that they doubt your accomplishment. It's that your accomplishment magnifies everything they have failed to become. This is the essence of envy. It doesn't just want what you have, it wants to poison it so it doesn't shine as brightly. And if they can't take your success, they will try to distort it until it looks smaller, less real, less worthy. Because as long as they can reduce it in the eyes of others, they can reduce the pain of seeing it in themselves. Marcus Aurelius, who lived at the height of power yet never trusted the whispers of flattery or envy, gave us this reminder: the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. In other words, don't stoop to their level. Don't waste energy defending your victories to those determined to twist them. Your task is not to prove your success. It is to keep living it, to keep building it, to let the results speak long after their bitterness has gone silent. Let me share a story. A man I'll call David had been working for years on a new business. He started with nothing: late nights, endless rejection, sacrifice that few people saw. Finally, his effort paid off. His company began to grow, clients came in, and for the first time, he felt the satisfaction of seeing his vision take root. He shared his excitement with a longtime friend, expecting at least a word of encouragement. Instead, the response was cold: "You just got lucky. Don't let it go to your head." That friend didn't stop there. In conversations with others, he downplayed David's work, suggesting that success was inflated, that the market was easy, that anyone could have done it. David realized the truth. It wasn't that his achievement wasn't real. It was that his friend couldn't handle seeing it. His growth was a mirror that revealed the other man's stagnation, and instead of facing his own emptiness, he tried to drag David's success down into the mud. So how do you respond when this happens? First, accept that not everyone is capable of celebrating you. And that's not your failure, it's theirs. Second, resist the urge to defend yourself. Explaining your hard work to someone committed to dismissing it is wasted breath. Third, keep building, keep succeeding. Keep walking your path. The silence of your progress is louder than their noise. Understand this. When someone twists your success into a threat, they are confessing something about themselves. They fear your light because it makes their darkness visible. They resent your growth because it proves what they could have done but chose not to. Their words are not about you, they are about the shadow they cannot escape. At the end of the day, the most powerful answer to envy is continuation. Continue rising. Continue proving, not with arguments, but with results. Let them talk. Let them twist. Their bitterness will wither. Your success, rooted in discipline and truth, will endure. And if you've ever felt the sting of someone minimizing your victories, then you already know why Stoicism matters. Because here, on True Stoic Way, we learn how to stand firm in success without needing approval, how to let envy collapse under the weight of truth. So if you haven't yet, subscribe and let's keep building a life that no whisper, no distortion, no bitterness can diminish. When you step back and look at these 9 signs together, a pattern emerges. The smile at your struggle, the whispers against your reputation, the applause that is only a mask, the subtle push to isolate you, to mirror and erase you, to provoke you into destroying yourself, the twisting of your actions into villainy, the quiet celebration when you are gone, and finally, the attempt to reduce your success into a threat. Each one of these is painful. Each one of them cuts deeper than open hostility, because they are not the wounds of an enemy declared, but of an enemy disguised. And yet, here is the truth you must hold on to. None of these signs are really about you. They are about the rot inside of them, about their emptiness, their envy, their inability to confront their own failures. Their reactions are not proof of your weakness. They are proof of their brokenness. This is where Stoicism shines as more than philosophy. It is not about denying the pain. It is about refusing to let pain define you. The Stoics remind us that we cannot control the opinions of others. We cannot control their envy, their lies, their distortions. What we can control, what always remains ours, is our mind, our judgment, our choice to stand calm while others collapse into bitterness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When someone smiles at your struggle, you cannot erase their smile, but you can erase its power over you. When whispers target your reputation, you cannot silence every mouth, but you can live so consistently that the truth eventually silences them. When someone twists your success into a threat, you cannot force them to celebrate you, but you can keep building, keep rising, keep shining until their envy drowns in your endurance. In the end, the fight is not about them, it is about you. Will you hand over your peace, or will you guard it? Will you let their shadows seep into your spirit, or will you build a fortress of discipline so strong that no whisper, no lie, no false smile can pierce it? Picture this, a man walking into the sunset, not because he has defeated every enemy, not because the world has stopped hating, but because he has chosen peace. The crowd behind him may chatter, may twist, may conspire, but his back is straight, his steps are steady, and his mind is free. He does not need to win over their hearts. He does not need to silence their voices. He needs only to guard his own, to walk his own path, to remain unshaken by the noise. That is your task. Not to win every argument, not to expose every lie, not to force every smile into sincerity. Your task is to guard your peace like your life depends on it, because it does. The man who loses his peace loses everything, no matter how many battles he thinks he has won. But the man who guards his peace stands undefeated, even if the whole world turns against him. So carry these 9 signs with you, not as a weight, but as a shield. Let them sharpen your awareness. Let them remind you that the shadows of others do not have to cloud your light. And above all, let them drive you deeper into the Stoic truth. You cannot control their hatred, but you can always control your response. And if you found yourself somewhere in these words, if you recognized a smile too sharp, a whisper too quiet, an absence too celebrated, then don't walk away in silence. Join us. This is exactly why True Stoic Way exists, to build a community of men who refuse to be defined by the darkness of others, who choose strength, clarity, and peace. So if this spoke to you, subscribe now. Leave your mark below with the words, "I choose peace." Because together, that's the standard we live by. Men who stand tall, men who walk free, men who guard their peace and never let the shadows win.